Hi guys, I'm Libertman, forced to be alone but free to decide how to live it. Welcome to today's second live stream of the night. Right now I got some technical difficulties today with the beginning of the live stream. That's why I started a little bit later, but we are here, and that's the most important, right? So today, in this second live stream, we're going to talk about something that a lot of men feel, but almost nobody explains clearly. That moment when your brain just switches off socially. You're not exactly depressed in the clinical sense. You are not crying every day. You are not even hating people. But you're just done. Done with drama, done with disappointment, done with trying to reach people who don't really see you. You go to work, pay your bills, maybe go to the gym, maybe play some games, but emotionally, you've pulled all the cables out of the wall. That's what I'm calling today the shutdown state. Not as a diagnostic label, but as a way to describe a very specific experience many men have. I don't have the emotional energy to care anymore. That we can hear now a lot of men, and also on YouTube, expressing this kind of similar phrases. So in this live stream, I want to show you that this shutdown is not proof that you are broken. It's actually your brain trying to protect you. And the problem is not that the shutdown exists. The problem is when it becomes permanent. To explain this properly, I'm going to lean on neuroscience. And so I prepare some studies to bring useful, backed information. So let me quickly name the three main papers I'm basing this episode on, that you can check on the description. The first one is from Ike, De Boer, Buwalda, and Cass from 2020. The study is called Social Withdrawal, an initially adaptive behavior that becomes maladaptive when expressed excessively. Then the second study on how loneliness changes the brain is from Cacioppo, Capitano, and other Cacioppo, and it's called Toward a Neurology of Loneliness. And also I'll be using this other study on severe and long-term social withdrawal from Dong, Lee, and Baker from 2022, that is called Hikikomori, a society-bound syndrome of severe social withdrawal. You can find the link to these studies in the description. So what do these studies actually say? Let's translate them into normal and as language and as simple as possible. In the first study from Ike, Social Withdrawal as a Survival Mode, this first paper has a very important sentence in its highlight that I'm paraphrasing in simple terms. Social withdrawal is an adaptive response, but it becomes maladaptive when chronic. So what does that mean? In nature and in humans, pulling back from others for a while can actually keep you safe. If your nervous system is overwhelmed, withdrawing reduces conflict, reduces energy consumption, gives the body time to repair. They talk about the social decision-making network in the brain. Systems that weigh, is this person safe? Is this group supportive or hostile? Is it worth spending energy to connect right now? If the answer is no, too often, the brain will start defaulting to avoidance. And here's the key point. The brain doesn't ask if this is good for your future happiness. It asks if you are safe right now. So in many cases, what we call withdrawal is actually your brain saying, look man, enough. We are not going back into that battlefield today. So it's a protective reflex, not a moral failure. In the study of Cacioppo on loneliness rewiring perception, he reviews many studies showing that feeling lonely is not just an emotion. It literally changes how the brain detects threat, interprets social cues, and regulates energy and stress. They show that when people feel chronically lonely, the brain tends to overfocus on danger in social situations, interpret ambiguous signals. Was that look hostile? For example, interpreting ambiguous signals as negative, and shift into an hypervigilant mode, as if the world is full of hidden attacks. So from the outside, it looks like he's cold, he doesn't care, he's distant. But internally, it's more like I'm tired, I've been hurt, and my system is trying to minimize further damage. Again, the key theme is protection, not laziness. And in the study by on Hikikomori and the Shutdown as a lifestyle by Dong, he reviews the Hikikomori phenomenon, an extreme form of social withdrawal, first described in Japan and now observed in many other countries. Some key points they highlight are that many Hikikomori are young men who retreat to their rooms for months or years. They reduce almost all in-person contact, sometimes only interacting online or not at all. It often starts after academic failure, job failure, social humiliation, or overwhelming expectation they feel they cannot meet. In other words, it's the shutdown state taken to the extreme. And again, it starts as a kind of, if I cannot win in this game, I will step out of the game completely. The brain is trying to solve a problem. How do I avoid pain with the resources I have? And the answer it finds is withdrawing. So let's see how this male shutdown state feels like from the inside. Let's bring all this into your experience as a man. You might recognize yourself in some of these situations. After a brutal breakup, where you felt used, betrayed, or simply not enough, after years of going the extra mile at work and seeing no recognition, after trying to be the good guy in relationships and getting silently replaced by someone else, after realizing your social circle doesn't really see you, they just use you as a therapist, a fixer, or a background character. At some point, your brain quietly decides, no more emotional investment. It's too expensive, and the return has been terrible. You may notice some of these signs. You stop initiating messages or calls. You leave some chats on read, not out of arrogance, but out of emotional fatigue. You avoid group events that used to be fun because now they feel like work. Even if you meet people, you keep your real inner world completely to yourself. From the outside, it looks like he became cold, distant, weird. But from the inside, it feels like I'm tired of being disappointed. If I open up, I'll just end up hurt again. I don't have the energy to explain myself or justify my existence one more time. And here's where the neuroscience comes in. Ike, the author of the first study, would say, this is your social decision-making network deciding that withdrawal is the safest option. Cacioppo, the author of the second study, would add, if this state continues, your perception becomes biased. You start seeing the world as permanently unsafe, even when it's not. And Dong, the author of the third study, would warn, if this becomes your default for years, you risk sliding into a Hikikomori-like pattern. So the shutdown state is not random. It's the result of your brain collecting evidence from your life, updating its risk model, and choosing minimal exposure to avoid further damage. So why this feels so different for men? Let's connect this to the male experience specifically. In many cultures today, men are expected to absorb stress silently, They are criticized if they show vulnerability. They often only society often only value men when they are productive, when they are useful or entertaining. So what happens? You accumulate the stress from work, financial pressure, family, and sometimes health. You might try to be open with a partner or a friend and get dismissed or shamed. You go online and see messages saying, "Real men should just toughen up. Nobody cares about your feelings, just grind." The brain registers a simple pattern. When I open, I get hurt or dismissed. When I shut down, I, at least, survive the day. From a survival standpoint, your brain is making a reasonable trade. Sacrifice connection to preserve stability and predictability. This is why many men describe the shutdown state not as sad but as numb. Not crying in bed, but feeling like life is on low volume. Not suicidal, but also not excited about anything. Not necessarily angry, just tired. And because you are still functioning, you go to work, you pay your bills. People often don't notice how serious this shutdown actually is, what you're going through inside. But under the surface, something very important has happened. Your brain has quietly changed its default assumption from connecting with people is worth the risk to connecting with people is usually not worth the risk. So let's see the difference between adaptive versus a maladaptive from neuroscience in this situation. Now, based on the Ike study, it's important to remark that the shutdown state itself is not evil. In many situations, it is the only rational response to repeated pain. And it's a way to stop bleeding emotionally. And it's a chance for your nervous system to recalibrate. The problem is not that you withdraw. The problem is when the withdrawal becomes global, that is from almost everyone, not just from toxic people, when it becomes permanent for months and years, not weeks, and when it becomes to an identity level, and you start saying, "I'm just a loner, a ghost, I'm an outsider now, that's who I am." So the author highlights exactly this. At first, withdrawal is adaptive. It protects you. If it persists and generalizes, it becomes maladaptive. Now it starts destroying the very life it was supposed to protect. The second author, Cacioppo's neurology of loneliness, shows what happens then. The more you feel isolated, the more your brain expects rejection. The more you expect rejection, the more you avoid small opportunities for connection. The more you avoid, the more your brain says, "See, nobody's here. We were right. Stay withdrawn." It becomes a self-fulfilling loop. And if we go back to Don's, the author of the Hikikomori paper, you can see how some people take this loop to its end point by a complete retreat. The shutdown becomes not just a state, but a lifestyle. So it's important to remark that your brain is not against you. It's just overprotective. It's functioning in an overprotective way. So let's try to take some notes or to highlight the important takeaways from this the study so far. In the first place, you're not crazy for wanting to shut down. There is good evidence that social withdrawal is a normal, built-in response to overload and threat. Also, your brain is not your enemy. It is doing what it was designed to do, to reduce exposure to harm when danger seems high and resources are low. Also, it's important to highlight that the shutdown state is not a destiny. It's a strategy that your brain has chosen based on past data. And the strategies can be updated, refined, or even replaced with better ones, once you are safe enough to experiment again. The male-specific part matters because of the way boys and men are socialized, the cost of reaching out is often higher, and the social reward is lower. That's why so many men end up in some version of this shutdown. But I want you to remember this clearly. Shutdown is a chapter, not the whole book. It's okay to be in a phase of, I'm done trying to date for now. I'm done trying to please everyone. I'm done being the emotional trash can. What we don't want is for this phase to freeze into a permanent identity that steals your future options. So now is a good moment, if you have been enjoying this reflection and breakdown of the scientific studies, please give a like to the live stream. If you're watching the replay, to the video, and subscribe to the channel. Please share it with another person that you think is going to be helpful too. And it helps a lot to the growth of this incipient baby steps channel, a humble channel. So let's go on, and now let's talk about how to tell if your withdrawal is still adaptive or has become harmful. How these brain patterns can gently be retrained without forcing yourself into fake extroversion. And let's see some practical strategies to keep your peace without becoming permanently isolated. Designing low energy, low risk form of connection, building routines that protect your nervous system while still giving your brain evidence that not every interaction is dangerous. And let's see how to think about loneliness not as a verdict on your worth, but as a signal your brain is sending. So let's use these 3 studies, all the data that they give us to find possible ways out to these solutions, and tailored to the C4PC model and personality types. If you've been living in a kind of emotional airplane on minimum power mode, I want you to know that your brain is not stupid. It noticed what happened to you. It's just that it built a shield. So let's see how to keep that shield without losing the rest of your life in the process. That is the challenge. It's not easy, especially if you are going through this shutdown state right now. It's not something that you can turn and shift from one day to the other, or quickly or soon. It will take a transition time. So now let's move into discerning when shutdown is helpful versus when it's not helpful, or when it becomes harmful. And how do you stop your brain from locking in this low energy mode? Let's see how does the recovery look like for men of each of the personality type specifically, and how you can rebuild connection without burning out again. So, how to know if your shutdown is still healthy or becoming dangerous? According to Ike, withdrawal becomes maladaptive or harmful when it crosses 3 thresholds. The first threshold is when withdrawal stops being selective. A healthy withdrawal would be you avoid specific people or environments that drain you. A harmful withdrawal or maladaptive withdrawal is when you avoid everything, even low risk, low pressure situations. Let's see an example. A healthy withdrawal. I'm not going to that party because the people there exhaust me. Now let's see an unhealthy example. I don't want to see anyone at all, ever. So when loneliness generalizes, this is a sign the shutdown state is sliding toward chronic mode. The second threshold is when withdrawal stops being temporary. In the neuroscience literature, short-term withdrawal is often protective. It reduces cortisol, allows emotional recalibration, and prevents conflict escalation. But the longer the withdrawal lasts, the more likely it's to become self-reinforcing. This author, Cacioppo, showed that chronic loneliness changes threat perception, reward processing, and motivation regions. So the brain starts to expect isolation and danger even when none exists. If your shutdown lasts months, not days or weeks, that is no longer recovery, it is rewiring. And then we have a third threshold when withdrawal starts matching Hikikomori patterns. The author, Dong, describes markers of severe shutdown, which are reduced tolerance for uncertainty, extreme avoidance of all face-to-face contact, reversal of day-night cycles, using screens as the primary connection, feeling safer alone than around anyone. So if you notice early version of these patterns in yourself, this is your brain saying, the outside world is unsafe until proven otherwise. This is the moment to intervene. Not with pressure, not with forced socializing, but with gentle, structured strategies. So let's talk about those. How to reverse the shutdown state without overwhelming yourself. Every intervention I'm about to describe and try to explain is directly supported by at least one of these three studies that we're covering today. The key rule is that you cannot switch from shutdown to full social engagement in one jump. Your nervous system is not built for that. Instead, recovery must be gradual, predictable, low energy, low risk, and self-paced. So let's rebuild in layers. The first step is to restore predictability. The author, Ike's model of withdrawal explains that the brain retreats when uncertainty is high, when the outcomes are negative, and emotional cost exceeds emotional return. So the first step is not go socialize. The first step is restore environmental predictability. For example, waking up at the same time daily, to have fixed meals, a stable sleep routine, going to the same gym at the same hour, small morning walks on the same route. Why does this matter? Because the shutdown state is triggered by unpredictable social threat. You begin by removing unpredictability from your daily life first. If the world feels more stable, your brain lowers its defenses. Then the second step is to reintroduce tiny, low-effort social signals. In the research by Cacioppo, he showed that loneliness distorts how you interpret facial expressions, tone of voice, and neutral signals. So the goal is not deep connection yet. The goal is to retrain the threat perception system with extremely small exposures. For example, saying thanks when receiving change at the grocery store, asking a store clerk where an item is located, holding the door open for someone, a small nod to a neighbor, a simple good morning to a barista. That's it. You don't need friends yet, you don't need community yet, you don't need deep conversation yet. You are showing your brain a small interaction are not dangerous. You are retraining your brain. And this is how you begin to rewire your threat expectations. Then a third step is adding low-risk presence-based connection. Before conversations and before bonding, before vulnerability, there is presence. This comes from observational data in Hikikomori research by Dong. The earlier stages of recovery show that it is easier for withdrawn people to re-enter cafes, libraries, co-working spaces, gyms, or parks where no one expects anything from you. Presence reduces the danger signal more effectively than forced conversation. Being near people trains the brain to think other humans means manageable. Then a fourth step would be to engage in purpose-based social activity, specific to men. So many men do not respond well to purely emotional or therapeutic forms of early connections. Why? Because male socialization distributes value through competence, task sharing, and collaboration. Therefore, male recovery from shutdown often works best through volunteering, martial arts, cycling groups, hiking, chess clubs, language classes, woodworking workshops, coding meetups. The activity is the bridge. The social contact is the side effect. So this aligns with male evolutionary psychology and male socio-cognitive norms and findings from multiple male loneliness reviews, including the one by Botha and Bauer in the previous live stream. So you don't make friends, you do things, and connection emerges along the way. Then the step number 5 would be to choose the right strategy for your C4PC personality macro group. So this is absolutely essential. Each personality cluster exit the shutdown state in a different way. Let's see, for the internal rational, they need structure, routine, predictable interactions, spaces with clear rules, minimal emotional unpredictability. So the best interventions for them would be volunteering with defined roles, co-working environments, scheduled hobby groups, martial arts, chess or coding meetups. For the internal emotionals, they need one-on-one connection, emotional safety, slow pacing, creative processing. So the best interventions for them would be through expressive arts, therapy or coaching, deep conversation with one trusted person, voice notes, journaling, poetry. In the case of the external rationals, they need competence, achievement, rebuilding identity through action. And so the best interventions for them would be learning a new skill, physical training, taking courses, mentorship roles, structured social hobbies. And lastly, for the external emotionals, they need frequent low-intensity interactions, encouraging environments, group energy with low pressure. So the best interventions for them would be applying to dance classes, community events, casual sports, group exercise, or small meetups. As you see, for each of the 4 macro groups is totally different pathway to accomplish the same goal. So let's see how to prevent a relapse into shutdown. Even when you begin recovering, your brain may try to pull you back because it remembers the safety of silence. So to prevent this, keep micro interactions daily. Even one interaction of about 5 seconds keeps the social circuitry active, like we were mentioning, as talking to any clerk in the grocery store or someone on the sidewalk, ask a question, what time it is, and receive an answer. Is the bare minimum. Then avoid isolation for more than 48 hours. The author, Dong, showed this threshold predicts relapse pattern. Then maintain a predictable routine. Unpredictability tends to leads to withdrawal. So try to be to repeat your routines to make a stable, predictable task for a while. Then to use what this author Cacioppo's principle of introduce as a principle of corrective experiences. That is to expose your brain to friendly signals, to neutral signals, and harmless social contact. These experiences override the threat bias. So, as the main takeaway of this topic, it's important to remember that your shutdown was a signal, not a sentence. So your shutdown was not weakness. It was your brain saying, I have carried too much for too long. I need a simpler environment. This reflex from your brain protected you. But you deserve more than just survival. You deserve a life with manageable connection, with dignity, with emotional rest, with companionship and human warmth. None of these require you to become extroverted. None require fake enthusiasm. None require becoming the man you were before the shutdown. You are not going back. You are going forward, but with boundaries, with clarity and intention. So, I will close with this. The shutdown state is not the graveyard of your identity. It is the place where a new identity begins. So, thank you for listening or watching this whole live stream up to this point. If this live stream has helped you understand yourself better, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, as it helps bring this content to other men who quietly need it. So much courage, take care, and see you in the next one.